You're good. Being funny, huh? Oh, you're just moving.
Hey, everybody, good morning. Friday, August 15th, we're looking at agendas for August 20th. That's a big day. We're going to adopt a budget that day. So we do have big meetings for the county commission and for fire district number 1. Yep. Tom, take it away.
Thank you, Chairman. Good morning, Commission. Nicole, any good news to start the 20th meeting?
Yes, we have just a couple things for good news. There's a finance employee that won an award and got her certification, so we'll talk about that. The health department is having an immunization clinic coming up, and then we have a bike safety video we want to quickly show since it's back to school time. That's all I have.
Good. We have some minutes to approve, and then we have Commissioner Wise has one board appointment, item C for Airport Authority. Then we get into new business. Mr. Wadle's here, but he's also briefed commissioners on item D, which is a conditional use for an accessory apartment in District 5. Is it 2? I'm sorry, I thought it was in Derby. Okay, in the Derby area. Okay, District 2. Any questions on that, Scott? You want?
That's is it District 2 or District 5? Yeah.
It's 2.
Okay.
Yes, it's 2. Okay.
No questions.
Item E is an amendment to the funding agreement with Exploration Place that we've talked with all of you about, I believe. And then starts the budget process. So there's 3 items in relation to budget on both agendas, general and fire. Item F on the general agenda will be the R&R, the revenue neutral rate exceeding component, which we will cover. Item G will be the public hearing for the budget. And then item H is actually the budget then. So if it's either adopt recommended budget or take on motions as the commission wants to amend the recommended budget. So that item H. And then Joe has a bid board as item I. There was 5 issues. Item 1 was some concrete pipe for public works. The low bid. Item 2 was uniforms and related product services for various departments. Item 3 was a 1/2-ton single rear axle crew cab truck for fleet management and Lake Afton Park. Item 4 is a Cox commercial service agreement for ComCare, and item 5 was some services for CDDO intellectual disability programs via state aid. So 5 items on bid board. Any questions or any explanation on any of those? Then we get to consent. J, K, and L all are easements. J is a road construction easement, no fiscal note attached to that. K is a stream maintenance construction easement, no fiscal note to that. Both of those are in District 3, and L is in District 3 as well, a temporary construction easement for a road project. Well, if Lynn has anything else on those, if there's any questions on the easements. M is a zone change from, we have a lot zoned as general office and 2 lots currently zoned as limited commercial that want to be rezoned to a limited industrial district. And this is on the it's 10.5 acres in the K42 area. This is by Schulte. So it's a rezoning case. There's no problems with that, which is why it's on consent, no disputes. Good on that, Commissioner Blueball, are you?
Yeah, I'm trying to do this. I don't know. West side of the road.
Yeah, map.
I was trying to figure.
It's not the triangle, is it?
It's right here. There's a lot of. That was originally for duplexes, right?
Yeah.
Changed.
It was a. Okay, item N is another easement. It's a grant, a drainage easement for the city of Wichita. This is in proximity to our EMS post by Jabara 3575 North Webb. So a neighbor is doing a project that needs some drainage easement there, and I think it's perpetual, right, Lynn? Wherever. Yeah. And I think they pay us for that, actually. There is a fiscal note, but it's coming our way instead of the other way. Yeah. Item O is the letter that we have been discussing with Representative Estes's office that Commissioner Meitzner has championed. It's a letter to request the encumbrance from the Northeast Sedgwick County Park. So there is a letter in draft form. I think you've all seen it. We just want approval for the chairman to sign and send on to the Estes.
Okay.
Mr. Manager, if I can go ahead, I did just read the drainage easement, and it appears that that was negotiated with the city of Wichita for just a $1 fee. So we granted that drainage easement to the city of Wichita.
We'll amend the backup on that then.
Yeah.
And then P, and I'll let Tim talk if there's questions. P is it's the agreement between KDADS and CDDO for services. Basically, it's a $3,167,529 KDADS grant. Is there any questions for Tim on that? I think this is
Routine.
And that is the rest of the items on consent are routine. There is a fire agenda and it's the same scenario regarding budget. The only, there's some minutes to approve, and then the new business items are revenue neutral rate, then public hearing, and then the budget. So, and that's the only new items on fire agenda. So, and that is it.
Okay, Tom, thank you. Commissioners, any questions? Okay, anything else we need to discuss?
Just one of the questions I had is regarding the mailbox in the cul-de-sac. Are we going to talk about that at some point?
We can. Lynn, do you want to talk? I think the commissioners all got an email from John Rolfe yesterday. And I haven't had a chance. I've not talked to John since email flurry. Have you seen the email, Lynn?
Yeah.
Okay, you want to go?
So, yeah, you received an email yesterday from John Rolfe concerning his property in the Four Oaks addition. I'm still trying to get a hold of him one last time. I've been working to compromise with him on the location of that mailbox. His main concern is just he feels that although he was given notice over a year ago concerning the conflict, he's just hoping to be exempted out from that action. All 7 of his neighbors have had their mailboxes removed. At least 2 of them, if not 3 of them, were similar mailboxes to his. His may have been a little bit, had electricity and everything, so it may have been a little bit more. And they've all had those removed as we started the project. And then we've been working with him over the last 2 weeks to try to come to a compromise on what will work for the project, as well as the safety of the general public out there. And really the crux of everything comes down to the fact that he's on a cul-de-sac. I think it is important to know, and this might be something that Mr. Rolfe is not aware of. It's a cul-de-sac today. But there is a contingent road dedication on the west side of his property that allows a road to be put in if the land south of Four Oaks is developed. It is landlocked without that access. So that is a keynote. But regardless of that, even on a cul-de-sac road, our concern is that you never know when a car is going to, errantly go off the road, whether that be because of inclement conditions, ice, whatever the reason may be. And you have an obstacle, an impediment in the road that isn't going to budge. So what could have been just a fender bender, just, a scratch with a mailbox post that was coming off is now going to be, even at 25, 30 miles an hour, it's going to be a significant amount of damage or injury. And where we come from and where I come from, we want to see that mailbox be able to give Whether it's on a cul-de-sac, whether it's on a through street, an arterial, they're all there. I will point out that the speed limit on Four Oaks cul-de-sac is 55 miles an hour by state statute. That surprises a lot of people. It surprised me when I first learned it 30 years ago. But the distance between houses and the large acre lots that are out there are so spread out that it doesn't meet the definition for the lower speed limit of 30. If the township wished to take that and to reduce that speed limit, they have the option of taking that action. But you still have vehicles going 30 miles an hour that are going to, even at 30 miles an hour, hitting an unmovable object is going to create damage and injury that can be avoided, and that's where we're coming from. The other issue is if we exempt cul-de-sacs, there's not in this particular case that subdivision is just a single cul-de-sac. When you go out and you go into larger, more regular subdivisions, you've got cul-de-sacs, you've got through streets, you've got collector streets all mixed in. How do you go about saying you decided to put your mailbox on the arterials or the through street side versus the cul-de-sac side, so now you can't have that mailbox? If you want to spend and put your driveway on the other lot, you can do that. Well, you start getting into the nuances of you can have it, you can't, you can have it, you can't. That gets into a lot of disagreements when we go through the permitting process of that. The other thing he's asking for, which I totally support, is a policy on this. Public Works has attempted for the last 30 years to get a policy through this body, but we've been unsuccessful to get any traction with that. One of the reasons is we're going to get crosswise with a lot of constituents real quick because there are, mailboxes out there that we're going to find eventually that don't meet the requirements of the breakaway that are going to need to go back and retroactively replace these. That's not an easy thing to do. It's not an easy thing to inspect and keep up with. So we would like to keep with federal regulations and guidance that just says, hey, if you got a mailbox, it's out at the edge of the road. I also agree if it's on a cul-de-sac or on a slower speed limit road, we have some variances we can put in place with the location of the mailbox. But it still needs to be breakaway. And that's the key component. It's a little more strict when you're out on the section line or arterial roads, but as you get into those neighborhood streets, there are slower speed limits and those cul-de-sacs, there's a little bit more leeway on where those can go. And I totally agree with that. And that's what you'll find if you look at other counties in the city of Kansas or in the state of Kansas, as well as around us, when they have adopted variances, if they have addressed more suburban neighborhoods versus rural neighborhoods at all, it has been to say that the location has variance, not the fact that it's breakaway or not breakaway.
May I talk about this for just a minute? So again, my philosophy has always been to have regulations that are only applied to people with a need to be regulated for some specific issue. I don't want to regulate people who are outside reason, a logical reason to regulate them. This is one of those examples. I'm thinking about just a property in Wichita. You probably know what I'm talking about. There's a one-way street that ends at a pretty busy road in Wichita, and I can't tell you how many times there's a car that has missed the stop sign and ended up in their living room. Okay, so they put up a wall intended to stop those cars from coming into their home, and it's not a mailbox. But if I lived there, we have the same thing in Interest Bank Arena. We had a car that was going so fast, it ended up basically damaging our arena because it didn't stop. It ran right into the building. So we put protection around there, and our courthouse has the same type of thing. We put things around some of these buildings for protection. If someone's going fast enough that they would hit that mailbox and cause bodily injury, I would tell you that I would want that mailbox there. Otherwise, they're going to hit my house and it's going to cause, potential injury to my home. I think to have something in that location is reasonable. In this particular case, the person that raised the issue has a reason to have a very large part. They can accept large parcels, if you will. It's not a standard little bitty mailbox. It is a secure mailbox that accepts large parcels, and they have a need for that. And so a breakaway 4x4 post mailbox doesn't work in this case. And again, this situation is they are in an area where I would say the maximum speed someone's going to hit going around the end of that cul-de-sac is probably 10 miles an hour. If someone runs into that mailbox at 10 miles an hour, it's not going to kill somebody. So I don't think it's going to injure somebody. It's going to injure their car. But that's about as bad as it's going to get. So the regulation, in fact, I've supported you in the effort to make a policy countywide. We have places along a lot of our roads where people have built up some type of a brick and mortar type of mailbox that if you run into that, it's going to stop you. And it's not safe. If someone runs into that, it could kill somebody. So we don't regulate this, unfortunately. We know they're out there. We don't do a thing about them until we reconstruct the road. Then that's when our chance, one and only chance. Kind of like our service drive code. We have a very high mandate for service drive code entrance, but once it's done and you check off the box, we don't regulate that after that moment. It ends up being something entirely different, 30 years later. So we have a chance when we construct a road to enforce this today, but that's the only time we enforce it. So we could force them to tear this down, and literally a month later, he could build it right back up again, and that would be good forever, unless we go back and reconstruct the road again. So to me, this is it's kind of illogical to me, and I think there ought to be a reasonable exception that says if there's, and by the way, I've not looked at this road. I think there's 8 properties or something along this road. We have lowered the speed limits on some of our roads where it makes sense, and residential neighborhoods are typically 30 miles an hour. You're saying these are large lots, and so 55 is the speed, but not at the end of the, we don't regulate the speed at the end of the cul-de-sac. It is reasonable to be much lower than 55. It's going to be 10 miles an hour. So this regulation doesn't fit this particular situation. I'll just tell you, there's 2 other topics I'm talking about this week. One of those is stormwater quality. I don't think we should be regulating people that should not be regulated. I can't find a good argument to regulate them. And just yesterday, I'm dealing with the issue of grasses over 18 inches. I have a constituent that's being regulated, if you will, to a noxious weed standard. Well, it doesn't have noxious weeds, but the grasses are more than 18 inches tall on a 5-acre lot. It doesn't make sense to me. So my opinion is these regulations ought to be tailored to situations that make sense. If it's noxious weeds, I get it. If it's 55 miles an hour, I get it. If it's stormwater quality that impacts flooding, I get it. But that's not the situation in these 3 cases. I can't support regulations that go above and beyond what's reasonably logical to support. So this is one of those things where I think there should be an exception for this case, not just for this applicant, but really for anybody who has a situation that's like it. They should be exempt from that policy because the situation is just different. It may only be a few people, but there should be an allowance that says if it's, a cul-de-sac and you're at the end of a cul-de-sac and it's reasonably 10 miles an hour, as you turn around, that we don't regulate like your 55-mile-an-hour highway. It's just different. And I think we need to have a way to create an exemption here.
I appreciate your comments. I will respectfully disagree with the 10-mile-an-hour example. There is no car going down any cul-de-sac driving 10 miles an hour. We can't get them to go 10 miles an hour in front of a Walmart.
Just to be clear, I'm talking about when they turn around, because the cul-de-sac is a bulbous
At the
round
end,
thing.
yes.
That turn around, you're doing a U-turn. So how fast are you doing the U-turn at the end of a cul-de-sac? That's where this house
Agreed.
is.
And if there were curb and gutter on these streets, I wouldn't have as much of an issue. It's not. Is your example with the wall is a good example. That location actually has curb and gutter in front of that wall. So what we call our clear zone is much different. And that's where I talk about it's reasonable to have location variances on cul-de-sacs because that allows us to still put it out there. But in this particular case, it's literally at the edge of the road. where it would end up being at. So you would only have to be really driving on the edge of the road and you're still going to hit that mailbox. You don't have to be off on the shoulder or coming off the road. It needs to move. But moving it in this particular case, because of the way it's built, requires complete removal of the base and the top and the boxes and moving it. We thought we had a reasonable plan for doing that here. But Mr. Rolfe is just looking for a complete exemption. And the reality is, with the exception of maybe making the tight turn in the cul-de-sac where this mailbox is not, it's along the main road throat. In the end, my job and the job of Public Works is to ensure the safety of the motoring public. That's what we're trying to do here. Consistency is great. Exceptions always, there's places that make sense for exceptions. And that's where, again, I say that the location and can have some variance, but it needs to be something that is going to be a breakaway. And that's just for the safety of the public at large.
Okay.
So the question is, how do we go forward? If we have a disagreement here, I don't know if my colleagues agree with me or not, but I think this is worthy of us to discuss as a commission and decide whether we want to make a change to this policy or not. And I think we should have that discussion.
Well, I think we've heard Lynn say a policy is something that they've asked. I'm in favor of that. I'm certainly in favor of that. This is one example, and it's an example of a constituent that has tried to follow through and has continued to follow through and is asking for a pause until they can get a policy in place. Obviously, we have a lot that we need to learn in this topic, and there's a lot of variances. So I'd support a policy.
Yes, great. I'm very happy to hear that. We can definitely staff this and talk about it in more detail. The underlying issue we have right now is we have a project that we've started. It's a project that was initiated by the neighborhood. They want these improvements. John Rolfe wanted these improvements. He was told at the time, over a year ago, when this whole thing started, that the mailbox had to go. He accepted that at that time. And he's been wonderful to work with, very nice gentleman to talk to. He understands where we're coming from. He's just been very open here. Unfortunately, waiting until the project started to say anything about wanting to be exempted. We wish we would have had a longer opportunity to work on this, but we have a contractor that was gracious enough to back off the project and go do some other work and come back next week. If we put them off again, we're looking at incurring additional charges for the project for remobilization. We also have issues with really not talking illegal, really not having the option of just walking away from the project. This is a self-initiated project by the neighborhood. They've asked for it. Everyone in the neighborhood has complied with removing their mailboxes, except for one resident. So we are on a timeline to make a decision. We're not going to be able to make a policy decision in the next 7 to 10 days.
We got, one of my questions was, is the mailbox impeding the construction of the road? And the answer was no. They can construct the road with the mailbox there. That's not the problem.
Correct. We can't construct.
I would suggest the project continue to do the paving. And if at the end of the day, we just write ourselves a resolution or something that says, if we choose to want to tear down that mailbox before we sign off on this project, saying the construction is complete, I'm sure there's going to be some type of final inspection. We have the right to go in there and tear out the mailbox after the road's constructed. That we can still do that. The construction of the road actually is not impeded by the mailbox. So that's the construction can happen. But if we want to tear out the mailbox, we can do that next week, or we can do it next month or 6 months from now. We can still do that.
We can't do the adjacent ditch improvements as is. We would need to go back to the consultant and have them redesign those ditch improvements along that property, which is going to incur a cost. And then there's going to, Pearson has already indicated to us, if we make those changes, we will incur additional costs from them to be able to make those changes. There's a larger issue at who's going to pay for those improvements. Right now, the neighborhood out there is paying for 100% of the design, 100% of the construction improvements. Are we going to take on that cost with us? Are we going to spread that amongst the neighborhood? Are we going to, impose it on just one parcel out there. Like I said, I wish he would have made his intent known to us more a better time frame. But I think for whatever reason, he chose to wait until we were literally out there starting to construct ditches and replace culverts to let us know that he did not want to have his mailbox relocated.
I heard about this, I think, a couple weeks ago, just in like a passing comment from someone. I don't even know who it was that talked to me about it. I didn't actually have a depth of knowledge on this until just yesterday. So it's frustrating to me that we've allowed this to get to this point where we're at an impasse now. Construction project is on hold, waiting for a resolution. And what bothers me even more is I'm sympathetic to his points. I think he's got a good point, and I wish we had a way to solve this. It didn't cost money.
Yeah, I'm
Challenge.
You and I completely agree in that respect. I wish we would have had a policy on this a long time ago. And I will admit, as much as I do want a policy, it will not be easy to craft a policy. It is going to take this body quite a while to get over all the hurdles that need to come up to do this. It's very easy to talk about a policy, and it's very easy to talk about drafting one, but the implications that policy will have need to be discussed so it's fully understood, and that's going to take some time.
I think we could bifurcate the policy and say, if someone reasonably has a reason for an exception during road construction, we would be able to provide a variance or an exception to the policy in general. No, we could work on the rest of the policy later, but the most important part of this at the moment that's causing the pressure to do this now is this one mailbox on this one construction thing. If we agree that this is a reasonable exception, that we should be able to write that piece out quickly and resolve this in the next week or two. Really, it's not that hard. The rest of the policy needs to come. But the length of that might take 6 months to a year. I agree. This can't wait that long. But this issue is a small piece of this. Do we want to allow an exception for someone who lives at the end of a cul-de-sac to not be under
He doesn't live at the end of the cul-de-sac. He lives in the throat of the cul-de-sac.
I've not seen the property, so I guess I asked that question, and I was under the impression is basically what people are still turning around. It's right at the turnaround, but I've not seen the property, so I don't know. Don't know that one way or the other.
All right, this conversation will continue. So we'll work. I would love to understand some recommendations on policy and understand more broadly of what this could look like and how complex it's going to be. And so let's keep moving. Mr. Wines.
One other thing I just wanted to bring up while we have everyone here is we had another fatal crash yesterday at 29th and 135th. These are the traffic concerns, I guess, that I'm more worried about safety than a slower road mailbox. But I do want to bring that up to just say it in public that I'd like to see some more safety stop signs or precautions at some of these intersections where we're having a lot of crashes and fatalities. This is something that's traveled, now with school starting. And Lynn, I know you live in this area too, and you drive it often, so do your children. So we have a deep concern here, but I think there's something beyond maybe what's normal in traffic controls and counts, that we have a growth out in these areas that I really want to sit down and address and start talking through just having safer intersections. So if we can, I don't know if we need to staff that, but I'd like to put it on a fast track.
Well, the good news is that that intersection, along with the north leg of 135th going from 29th to 45th, as well as 29th Street from 119th to 35th, are already under design. They were in our CIP. They have been for several years.
Okay.
And so that intersection, along with the leg, what we would call the east leg and the north leg, are under design right now. And one of the things that they have been tasked with, the consultant has been tasked with, is what are the appropriate improvements at that intersection.
Okay. Could we bring this to a staff meeting and go over those CIP, the planning of those projects, the timeline, talk about speeding up? Maybe we have first phase that's a faster approach to safety than maybe the grand design of things. I'd just like to understand the timeline a little bit better, and for the public to know that it's in the forefront of our plans and our minds.
I know that after the last fatality out there, we ran a analysis of the intersection. It didn't warrant additional signs or signalization. I do not believe there has been much activity since then until this incident. I'm very interested to find out what the investigation reveals as to the possible cause of the accident, because it doesn't appear there was any attempt to stop whatsoever by the eastbound driver. So there's that to consider. But yes, I can provide you the CIP and the information on that. And if you want to staff it, I don't think it would take very long to go over that, what we're doing. There's a couple of areas out in Northwest Wichita area, the Sedgwick County area, that have projects that are addressing our intersections.
When I had a cab board, we were trying to approach this more proactively than react. I feel like we're reacting once again. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the last fatality was Deputy Cindy Carter they had. And that was a situation when she was responding to a call. She was going high speed. I don't know that she had her license siren. I don't know the status of that. But the guy that hit her didn't even tap the brakes. He was apparently out of his mind on drugs or alcohol. And I believe there may be a criminal case that may be related to that. I don't really know the status of that either. But it was not an intersection problem as much as it was the configuration of that is you have two high-speed paved roads where one direction is supposed to stop and one direction is allowed to just fly through there. And so our cab board looked at that situation and said, how many of those types of intersections exist in my district? And believe it or not, it wasn't as many as I thought. I was surprised how few there were. We did a lot of work and came up with, if you will, an idea to be proactive, if you will, and address those types of intersections where it's 55 miles an hour in two directions, and one direction is supposed to stop, and one direction basically has a stop sign. And those are the types of intersections when someone doesn't tap the brakes, they just fly right through there and they happen to hit square, someone's probably going to die. And that's my opinion. I'm not an expert. I talked about this. I said, what would it cost to standardize some things for that type of intersection, like the cross traffic does not stop sign or having flashing beacons in both directions, the yellow one direction, red the other, intersection ahead signs, and possibly rumble strips. I think to standardize those things at those types of intersections, they go a long way to actually, with not a lot of cost. The commissioner from District 3 took my comments and it said that for every intersection in Sedgwick County, and it came up with some ridiculous number, like $10 million CIP, CIP initiative, and it just killed it on the front end. It was very frustrating to me that the conversation turned in that direction. But I'll still say that the problem with these types of intersections is that if someone doesn't stop and they just blow through that intersection, as we've seen probably twice now in this intersection, is that we have two high-speed roads where someone, all responsibility to avoid an accident is on one side, and the other side basically trusts the other guys are going to stop or doesn't see them coming. And to me, this is the conversation you need to have, is what does it cost to have that type of mitigations at this type of intersection? And how many intersections like that are there in Sedgwick County? I don't know that. And I have the smallest geographic district, so maybe it's not a problem. Maybe it's a bigger problem where I don't understand how many intersections are like this in other parts of the county. For Sedgwick, for District 5, it really wasn't that many. And
I don't have that number with me, but we do have that number and I can get it for you. I will tell you that majority of our intersections are either uncontrolled or two-way stop. It's very common. Not just Sedgwick County, across the state, across Midwest, everywhere. It's very common. 86, I think the number is 86% of crashes that occur nationwide are due to inattentive driving. I think even you have publicly admitted that, this really does come down to inattentive driving. I would be surprised if that probably wasn't a key factor in this accident, but I don't want to speculate anything. I just, based on what we witnessed when we went out on scene last night, the issue we have is our stop signs, our cross traffic does not stop, our flashing beacons, they were only as effective in their and I'm trying to say how to say this. The more you use them, the less effective they become. Once you get used to seeing something and you see it all the time, and I think Maze is actually, I respect Maze and what they do, but they've put up flashing the LED signs on most of their traffic signs in the city, all the way up throughout their jurisdiction. I live in that area. I don't see the flashing signs. Even me, I don't see them. My subconscious is just used to seeing it. So it's what's there, and I don't pick up on it. So that's the same thing when you have stop signs, signals, and everything. The more you use like that, not only is it a detriment to the free flow of traffic, but also you subconsciously you just stop seeing that. So that's one of the reasons why nationwide, as far as I know, most of the first world countries out there all use a method of least restrictive to most restrictive, working your way up there. Again, yes, you can say it's not proactive versus reactive, but you're looking for putting in those controls that are going to be least inhibited of traffic while still maintaining a reasonable safety level. What's become hard and difficult of late is we have more distractions than ever in our cars and along our roadways. And we're coming up with having to drive, we have issues like Drive to Zero and trying to come up with these guidelines and improvements that's kind of balancing that human factors issue with what needs to happen reasonably out in the field. And I think we have a number of factors we can put in there, like the flashing beacons, like the LED flashers, like our red vertical reflective signs, all that lead up and are reasonable intermediate improvements before we get to signalization or a roundabout. We will re-engage and re-update our analysis of this intersection based on the information that we receive from this in the next couple of weeks. And we'll see what is, I can see easily maybe a larger stop sign or cross traffic does not stop signs or something like that as being a reasonable intermediate as we're waiting to get to that CIP projects that's going to make improvements to that whole corridor.
And I agree with part of what you said, and I'll agree with all of it. And I'm not the expert here. I'll admit that up front here. I think having a higher level of cautionary signs actually is beneficial, and I think we should standardize it more. I think that again, the MUTCD or the state of Kansas only requires 30-inch stop signs, so we've gone to 36 as a standard across the entire county. We still haven't replaced them all, by the way. There's still some 30-inch signs out there, I understand. But we got to 36. Why do we do that? Because we thought it was a good idea. And then we react by putting 48-inch signs where we see injury accidents. We've added those. But if it's a good sign, if it's a good thing there, some of these intersections, we haven't had a fatality yet, but those when we will. And then we react by putting a larger sign in when that happens. I think that the cost of a sign going from the visibility of a 48 versus a 36 is significant. The square inches is drastically different. So I just think it's an investment. I think it's worth the conversation. It's certainly I think it's worth the cost. And I disagree. I think that one thing we are not doing anywhere really, unless we absolutely have to, is rumble strips. That's the one thing that actually wakes people up because you feel it in the seat and the steering wheel. And I think we could do that more. We would see a lot less of these types of accidents. You could put up all the signs you want. If someone's half asleep or on their phone, they may not see any of it. But the rumble strips do actually affect because it actually is tactile, which is why we have stick shakers in airplanes. Okay. It's tactile, and that wakes people up, gets them to pay attention. And so my perspective is that rumble strips is the solution at intersections where people are half asleep and when signage doesn't seem to work. But we take, and I don't mean you do this personally, Lynn, but we tend to take we try to approach things minimally. And the theory is we don't want to over control. I think when you go from a two-way stop to a four-way stop, that to me is slowing down the traffic, and it frustrates them when they don't feel like it's necessary. I'm not asking for that. I'm asking for signage and potentially rumble strips to wake people up. And to me, it's not substantially changing traffic flow. It just alerts them of what's about to happen. The danger is right in front of you. please wake up and, pay attention here. I think a conversation at a staff meeting needs to happen. And I think it's urgent. I've been on this train now for most of my county commission years I've been here.
Commissioner Wise, thank you for bringing this up. Commissioner Howell and I had a business meeting this morning, and the accident yesterday was a focus. A lot of people are discussing, and as we brought up the issues with the K-42 accidents, the accidents there, it seems like we have a high number of accidents in the rural parts of Sedgwick County, whether it's on the state highway or it's a county highway. And I would like to staff those numbers. As you guys are talking this, I'd like to have another thing where we look at the trend, maybe look over the last 3 to 5 years or something and see if there's a spike. And I don't have the solution. I don't know if it's rumble strips or whatever it is, but I'd like to do some kind of causation and correlation to try to identify maybe some root cause of what we can. It's just way too many people are dying and getting seriously injured in these accidents.
Commissioner Bluebow, we can definitely aggregate that data. It will take us some time. That's not something that can happen quickly. It'll take some time. But I think what you're going to find overall is that we may be experiencing an intermittent spike right now. But what we're being taught and what we're seeing is, as I said earlier, there is a much more distraction inside and outside the vehicle that's occurring now than has been in the past. And that's going to relate to a lot of what, and that's what hooks into the 86% of crashes are distraction related.
We had that discussion this morning and as well. And we were trying to, it doesn't seem like that's ticketed or the laws have changed a little bit. How do you identify that as a root cause in today's environment? Because our phones are going all the time. How do you know, is it your phone? Is it your talking to somebody else? I don't know how exactly that comes out in the accident report.
I think Rusty,
how you can truly identify that's the root cause.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I just don't know how we can really identify it.
Rusty and Tom, as well as the sheriff, might be able to talk. We'll definitely be able to talk better about that than I could. I just know, talking to law enforcement, that they have ways of clearly knowing when somebody is distracted driving based on their mannerisms in the vehicle. I don't know what that is.
Brake lines or some
Yeah,
stop marks.
I don't know what it is. But and I don't know what threshold there is before you pull somebody over for that. But yes, enforcement is an issue. And again, I don't know the answer. That would be something for the sheriff or maybe Rusty and Tom can.
When we staff this, sir, we'll have the sheriff in there and we'll give it the full look.
Yep.
Thanks for the discussion. Commissioner Bluebow and I have done a video that I think we're going to be sharing just about distracted driving and what we can be doing as drivers to do our best job. But I think Commissioner Howell brought up a good point where these are happening are two high speed intersections. And some of them, especially near this 29th and 135th, is actually, and I can think of even 119th and 29th, where you think it's 55 because it used to be, and you try to go 55, but it's actually 40, 45 with all of the development around. And so some of it is just with the growth in the rural area, these are no longer rural roads. And so we need to address maybe the intersection approaching signs or through traffic does not stop signs. I think there's a lot of ways that we can do this and grow not reactive, but proactive with some of these high speed and growing areas where we're no longer, it is rural, but it's not rural. And the people driving out there aren't rural drivers.
We've talked a little about this and I fully support that. That's great. And one of the things in teaching my son to drive and my daughter, we talked about was I would always ask them as we get onto new roads, what's the speed limit? And I was trying to teach him that when you are in these areas where you start seeing a lot more driveways that are a little more, that's a clue right there. It's not going to be 55 miles an hour. And to read those. And I think that's a good message for the public and to understand and help. If obviously we don't have a speed limit sign every 100 foot, we're putting them out where they change and every so often. And that's a good way for someone to pick up on I know this should be about 40 miles an hour because there's just way too much,
Yeah.
too many access points along this area.
Yeah.
And those are good messages to put out there.
Thank you, Len.
Okay, we will staff this. We'll try to get our minds around this and see if we can get a bit more proactive. Thanks, Len. Appreciate it. Okay, anything else? Okay, big meeting next Wednesday. See you there.